Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Hopefully, all of you can hear me. This is Michael Kammes coming to you live to 4 different social media platforms. In case you haven't guessed, this is me. Hi, Michael Kammes. Good to see so many of you tuned in. This is an experiment. This is an experiment because I miss talking to a lot of you, and I'd like to talk to you more. And doing something live like this allows me to have the people I'd like to see on here and the people who want to learn more and contribute to the community. So we have chat right now open, and I'm going to see who has joined us. I see Cooper and Barry. Excellent. Great to have you here. Am I coming through okay? Am I sounding okay? Is everything in sync? I'm hoping so. So, the things we're going to do today, the things we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple things. This could go for 20 minutes. This could go for 2 hours. Who knows? But I would really interested to hear what you have to say about some of the topics that I've picked today. So as I mentioned, we're coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So no matter what social media platform you're on, if you have any questions, any comments, any critiques, I've already had someone say you're running at 720p, Michael, and I had hoped that you would do better than 720p. Hey, I'll go to 4K next time, but let's make sure this works to begin with. So the first thing we probably want to tackle today are some news items, right? So I've picked the big elephant in the room, especially for our industry, and that's of course Big Purple, right? We're talking Avid. What, Kurt? Kurt can't access the video stream. Try again, Kurt. Refresh. Yes, this is not going to be a polished presentation because I want to interact with you no matter what social media network you're on in real time. This is not a monologue. So, Avid, right? We've all heard that Avid has been acquired, $1.4 billion deal with STG, Symphony Technology Group. And a lot of folks are concerned about what this means. And there's very polarizing opinions on this, right? There's folks that feel that as soon as you sell your soul to PE, to private equity, your business is done for. There's folks who say that you should stay public because then you can do what you want to do and you're only beholden to the shareholders. And there's pros and cons to a lot of those things. So I thought first we'd get some of this out. I've worked for publicly traded companies. I've worked for public equity, private equity, and there are different angles to both sides. Right? When you're working for a public company, there's a lot of rules that you have to follow in terms of what information you can discuss, what you can share, because it may influence stock price or who's going to purchase what in the next quarter or so. You have a more immediate responsibility to the shareholders. And for some folks, that's great. You also pay a heck of a lot to be a publicly traded company. But when you become private, you get to be a little bit more strategic because you're negotiating and working with the private equity teams, the folks at the private equity facility to determine what the trajectory is. And you don't have to have that immediate success that is often needed with publicly traded companies. But before I get more into that, I think we should look at just how well Avid's done in the past few years, right? A lot of folks are concerned that, what does this mean? And I thought what I do is kind of pull up how they've been doing as of late, right? So if you take a look at the screen right now, we've got the Avid stock price. If you take a look, the stock price, what the STG acquired Avid for was a little bit above what they're trading at when news first broke several months ago. And if you go all the way back, that this price has not been this high until we go back to 2018. In fact, if we go to click on Max here, we can actually see that the stock price hasn't been this high for many years, many years. And we go back to pre 2010, and you can see when Jeff took over, Jeff, wonderful guy. If you take a look here, he was able to bring Avid back from the brink. Remember when they were delisted for a little bit of time there? He's been able to get them up from sub $5 all the way up to what it was sold for, which is, I believe, $31. And if we took a look at some of their investor decks that Avid's had out there, you can see that they've been doing very well for themselves despite the pandemic. And while that's all good, those are all good things to be aware of, I think a lot of people are concerned about what this means for the different properties, right? So what does that mean for Media Composer? What does that mean for the Nexus storage? What does that mean for Media Central? What does it mean for Pro Tools? What does that mean for everything else around? Well, inside of Avid, and that we can't know. That we don't know. We won't know how that shakes out until next year when Avid and STG uh, start their relationship together, and we see what they publicly announce as their roadmap if they decide to do that, because that will kind of tell us where they're going and where they're getting PE money to do that. There are a couple properties or a couple investments that STG has, which I think would serve to work very well with Avid. If we look at something like Onclusive, which does media monitoring, that's a really good relationship. If we look at where Avid is outputting media from, right, news and broadcast, so that plays in really well. And there's been grumblings for a while that STG wanted to get more into the media realm. So it's interesting it'll be interesting to see how they figure things out. Now, my concern is that Avid, as you know, owns many different properties, right? They have Pro Tools and Media Composer, et cetera. And if Avid doesn't reinvent the wheel, if Avid doesn't come to market with something huge and massive and game changing, private equity usually looks at a 3 to 5 year game, right? What are they going to do in 3 to 5 years? Can they make money from that company? And no one wants to break the company up, right? Everyone enjoys the relationship they have. But what would that look like if we looked at like a nightmare scenario where, for whatever reason, Avid doesn't thrive in the PE realm? And that's usually been the discussion we've had over the past couple of weeks is what will happen with that. And if we look at the investor decks and we look at the subscription numbers, in fact, I'll bounce back to the investor briefings. We'll put this back on screen. You can see, if we go through these documents here, you can actually see the comparison of how many users for their different applications here. And I know this isn't one-to-one, right? One user spending $1 on Media Composer isn't equivalent to one user spending $1 on Pro Tools, but you can see a vast majority of Avid's user base is Pro Tools, right? And we know that pretty well. We know that Pro Tools has been the audio juggernaut for the past 20 plus years. And we also know, just from grumbles in the street, that there have been companies that have been interested in purchasing Pro Tools from Avid. I won't name any other companies, in case some folks think there's insider baseball. But it seems to me that if Avid didn't revolutionize things and didn't revolutionize and rebuild the wheel, that Pro Tools would be the first to go. Right? We know that's the jewel. We know there's companies who want to buy that, and so we could see private equity selling off Pro Tools. And that would most likely mean their hardware business as well, not only the cards, but also all the consoles, all the live stuff, etc. What that brings to light for a lot of others is, what about Media Composer? What happens to Media Composer? And I think we all can relax, right? Media Composer isn't going anywhere. It's ingrained with over 90,000 users across the world. It's, as you know, used in virtually every feature film and a vast majority of broadcast television. And it's also used for some points for corporate video, right? So even though the need for broadcast content may decrease, we're still looking at Media Composer being used for many other markets. So I don't think we should be afraid of that going anywhere anytime soon. I am concerned about storage. Avid doesn't build their own storage; it's OEM'd, and they've already been able to virtualize the Avid video file system, and what enables bin locking on virtualized storage. Right? They were doing it on Azure Cloud. They're now looking, as they've talked about, doing it for AWS, for Amazon Studios. So it's not crazy to think that they've been able to containerize that and enable that via third parties. And it could also be a revenue driver, right? Not a lot, but you could license the ability for project sharing on top of someone else's storage. You wouldn't have to then utilize the alternatives that Mimic or Facilis or any of the other storage systems are using to get around the kind of bin locking that other folks use. So if something does go wrong, and the private equity play doesn't play out as fast as Symphony would like it. That's kind of what I see happening. I'd love to hear what you're thinking about. So I'm going to look at chat right now. We got a lot of comments here from various social platforms, a lot from Facebook, got some LinkedIn here. Let's see. Alex. Oh, we've got Alex Goldner, and I'm going to put you up on screen, Alex. So we do have a comment here that says, if you love Media Composer, would you still use it if it costs twice as much to rent 3 times? I'm not sure it will cost more. Obviously, that's speculation, but I've always felt that Avid has priced their tools a little bit higher than market average because there are facilities that will pay that. And there's the ecosystem that they're paying into. So paying a little bit more makes complete sense. And we've seen that ever since the days of the first Media Composer systems down through the Adrenalins and Nitrous, et cetera, until we've gotten to this $50, roughly $50 a month, or even less, right? Free for students. And they also have the free version plus the non-enterprise version. So I'm not convinced we'll have to pay more for Media Composer. I'm not sure I would pay extra for Media Composer. I'm not the use case, though. I'm not cutting every day. Media Composer is not my editor of choice. So I'm really not the person who would decide to pay that. But if you are a professional, and I know that that title is rife with judgment, paying $50 a month, that's an hour of labor, right? Let's be straight here, right? If it goes to 3 times, that's 3 hours, right? So if you are making a decent living utilizing Media Composer, yeah, it sucks. You may not be able to go out for that porterhouse steak, but being able to say, yeah, I'll pay that. Again, I'm not the demographic. I don't think the prices will be going up. Let's see what else we have here. I expect Media Composer. Well, we'll just show this. We'll put this up here, right? I expect Media Composer isn't actually profitable, even at current level of development investment. You got to be more specific than that because Media Composer is not just software, right? There's hardware around that as well, including storage, which has a massive profit margin. And we're not even talking about the edit on demand, etc. So we'll move on to other topics. This next topic is something that is much more even more interactive, right? This is Q&A. And why am I putting Q&A in here? That's because I get asked a lot of questions. I've always felt that technical education is a massive passion of mine. That's why I do 5 things. That's why I'm on forums and boards and Reddit, and I speak with integrators and resellers and user groups because I love it. I honestly feel that this industry wouldn't be as powerful as it was. It wouldn't be as interesting if we couldn't understand the tech. So I've put together a lot of questions that I get when I go to conferences, when things that I get via email, things that I get via forums, and I'm going to address a couple of them. And I'd love for you to chime in chat in your respective networks, right? So let's start with our first one here. First question is, why don't 5 Things episodes come out more frequently? Yes, I'm tooting my own horn with the first question, but I get this a lot, and there's more to it than just what I can fit in a smart-ass remark at a convention. So 5 Things, for those who don't know, web series I put out. It was monthly. It was a 10 to 15-minute video on the top 5 things you needed to know about some kind of technology. Or a concept. What are codecs? How to choose asset management, et cetera, et cetera. And it got really difficult to keep making for various reasons. I'm a perfectionist, which is never good. Perfection is the enemy of good enough, right? Is that it? And in addition to that, I've worked for several companies, and when I leave to go to different companies, sometimes I lose access to technology to test. That becomes an issue. I also have found that, I ran this by some friends to make sure that I wasn't just get off my lawn. I found that the interest in technology as it pertains to mid to high level media and media creation, interest has waned. And I don't know if it's because we're just not attracting more people to this market. If folks say, look, I've been creating for so long and I only learned tech in order to create. Now it's easier. I just want to create. Okay, that's valid too. So it's been difficult to keep creating content when the market is when the market seems to be getting smaller for people who want to know that mid to high end technology stuff. So that's the answer for that question. Now let's jump into another one. And I do see your questions in chat, and I will get to those. So let's see what our next question is. What video editing software and tools do you use? Okay, this is great because Alex mentioned a few minutes ago, hey, would you pay two or three times more for Media Composer? And I said, I'm not the demographic. I edit with Premiere Pro usually because I use After Effects, because I use Photoshop, and the interop and round tripping mostly works. I've also used a lot of Mogerts. I'm also use a program called Subler, which allows me to interchange metadata between different applications for the podcast. What else am I using? I use Isotope for audio. I use Color Lab for my first color pass because I have a slight color blindness and I'm really self-conscious about that. So I use Color Lab AI, which does a great first pass. So those are the tools I use. So let's go to another question. And this one is, I've tried voice cloning and it sounds flat. How do I fix that? Okay. So voice cloning, right, has become a very large topic in the past couple months with AI. And there's a bunch of websites out there that enable you to clone someone's voice. And I'm not going to get into the legal or illegal ramifications of that. That's with you and your God, or should I say your priest. Anyway, the voice cloning right now is really good at getting someone before coffee. If you were to clone someone's voice, it sounds like they don't have a pep in their step. They don't have coffee. It just is kind of monotone. And there are some sites that say, look, we'll give you an excited read, we'll give you a sad read, but there is no way to change intonation right now. There is a couple companies out there that are doing this on a custom level. I've spoken to folks at various cloud providers like AWS, and while their technology is accelerating and doing well, it's still very call center type technology. So we're not at the point where we can adjust intonation. I would think in the next year we would see that, much like how we do speed ramps, right, with video. Imagine being able to do that with audio. And using that for intonation or an uplift at the beginning or end of a sentence or an exclamation point. So I can totally see that coming out in the not too distant future. So let's go to chat and see what other questions we have. We have David. Good to see you again, David. With Creative Cloud Files sunsetting, we sync productions, projects, and proxies this way. Okay, so what you're saying is you're using the Adobe Creative Cloud sync ability, which is a workflow I use all the time when I'm working with editors and team projects, and I want them to get my media to them and their media back to me. David Park says, my guess, Frame will be positioned to fill this void, but do you have any other recommendations? Drive, Dropbox weren't as fast. Yes, I'm a big fan of LucidLink. And I know LucidLink has a price attached to it, but what I like about it is you can start working immediately. If you're not familiar with LucidLink and you haven't checked it out, where have you been? You should check it out. It allows you to read the metadata of a media file that's sitting on the cloud, and your local system is tricked into thinking it's local. I know. This is a very broad generalization on how this works, but the metadata makes it possible for the NLE or any other application to load up that video and start working with it, and it'll cache and buffer the frames that you are pulling, so you can start working with content immediately. So I'm a big fan of that, but I get that there's the price aversion. Hey, thanks, Apple. Thanks, App Store, for bringing everything down to $1. But again, if this is a career and this is a job and you make money off this, I believe you should start paying for stuff. So the LucidLink is a good angle, but you're right. Dropbox and a lot of the other facilities or a lot of the other online scenarios are very push-pull and throttle your download and upload ability. I'm also a big fan of having local network storage and then connecting that to your internet connection with safeguards and firewalls, right? I use a Synology here behind a Ubiquiti firewall, and that seems to work really well when I need to share out a ton. People can read it directly from my local NAS. Let's see. Deb. Hi, Deb. How you doing? Where do you think a good place for assistant editor to get started dipping their toes into AI? I'm working on scripted TV shows and I'm trying to get into animated features more solidly lately. That's a great question. The over the past couple years, it's been tough enough to get a job as an assistant editor, not just because of work drying up, but because the age old mentorship and apprentice editor programs and kind of lifestyle have largely gone away. And now that we're all working remote, it's even worse. So, AI. Well, there's a couple things you should learn about AI because that will help guide you. I think learning the difference between general AI, generative AI, and machine learning, those three things are the biggest things to understand the difference between them. What you're going to be limited to, especially as it pertains to NLEs, is that NLEs have to either build in the infrastructure, build in the features to use AI, such as what DaVinci Resolve has done with text to speech and text edit or speech editing based on text, as well as text-based editing with Adobe using their tools. What's great is that utilizing the extensible structure of Resolve, whether it's using workflow integrations in the studio version or Python scripts in the free version, or the panel SDK for Adobe, or something Avid may or may have not talked about at a convention that I don't know if I can talk about, but they talked about it. The extensibility is going to be the key factor here. And the more applications that are being extensible where you can reach into and manipulate the data sitting in your bin, project folder, timeline, preview window, program window, etc., that's when you're going to start, as Doc Brown to say, start to see some serious shit. And I think that's what's going to be very powerful for everyone in post production utilizing an editorial tool is being able to say, how can I use cloud based AI services that either manipulate data or index data and give us those answers, and let us create content or at least search for content. That's what's going to be really powerful. Right now, we have 100 AI services popping up from third parties every week or every month, and right now none of them are directly into the NLE or into Pro Tools unless we look at things like Isotope, which is, whether that's AI or not. That's a almost a philosophical discussion at this point. So, what I would recommend is talking to Zach Arnold. He may or may not be thinking about doing something on that. And also, I'm happy to go out and have coffee and just share things with you. But right now, there really isn't a great AI primer for post production. Oh, wait, you know what? There is. There is actually. If you go to 5thingsseries.com, there happens to be an episode I just released on AI in post production. So you may want to check that out. I know you didn't plan for a blatant plug, but I greatly appreciate it. So let's see what else we have here. We have Kurt working with Avid and the high end union pay we get for knowing all platforms, especially Avid inside and out. You're just sick of hearing the editor wars. You learn, you know the thing that makes the most money, stay up on all of them. You know what? For years, I've signed off 5 things with learn more, do more, and that hasn't changed. The concept of fighting over Mac versus PC or this software versus that software, at this point, I'm almost just numb to it. It's like kids playing in the street. You do you. That's not me. That's not my world anymore. But you're right. You should learn more, do more. So let's take a look at some of the other questions we may have. We'll bring up some of these. We'll go to here. And what is this one? What camera are you using for this? I'm using a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, 4K. I've got a Sigma 1.8 on there with a Speedbones Meta Booster. I'm also using an Elgato green screen behind me, Elgato key lights, which I get such a kick out of the fact that they're called key lights. Key lights. And I'm also using an AKG C414 mic with a Shure X2U converter. So you can go back later and listen to this and get all those specs. Let's go to our next question. Let's see, what is this one? You say on-prem a lot. What does that mean? Uh, yeah, I've heard recently that people are sick of hearing this term. If you're working on something in the cloud, you say it's in the cloud, right? We don't say online too much anymore because online and offline, as you know, have totally different meanings than on the cloud or off the cloud, online or offline. So when we say something is on-prem, it's short or slang for on-premises. It means what's at the facility. So if I were to say, "Oh, you're editing on-prem or editing in the cloud," that means, "Oh, you have two options. You can edit on-premises or in the cloud." And it's just something that we tend to slang together, and I apologize. Let's see what else we have. What tech out there? What tech out there that we may have not heard of has you the most excited? Well, I see one person in the chat who actually works for the company, so I'll let you do a blatant plug in here if you want, Dan. My newest hotness, newest sexiness is a company called Gray Meta. They have a product called Curio, Curio Anywhere. And Curio Anywhere, instead of leveraging just cloud models to look at media and analyze faces, sentiment, location, speech to text, logos, instead of relying on cloud models like AWS or Azure or Google, which charge you per minute, they've built their own models, which means the pricing for this is traditionally much less than cloud, and you get sometimes to a critical point where you've paid for it and you can just keep using it without incurring any permanent charges in some cases. It also gives you immense security because you can run it on premises without going up to the cloud, on-prem without going to the cloud, or you could spin it up in your own tenant in any cloud you want. I believe. I think it's right now it's AWS, but I believe it's for others. So I'm a big fan of Gray Meta, and that's Gray Meta with an A. Let's see. We have okay, I'm just going to put this up, Cooper, because this is a long question. We're 100% Adobe House for post-production. My producer wants us to create a B-roll library for the years of covering we've shot and currently stored on our SAN. My first thought was use something like Bridge and then have AEs start tagging and start tagging clips with metadata like location, subject, day, night. Eventually, we want a fast and easy way to locate media within our library and primarily from within Premiere. This is I didn't plan for this to happen, but Gray Meta having Curio tag that content and then utilize Curio as a search mechanism, or exporting that data and having it talk to your asset management system or whatever you use as a search tool. That's an option. You're probably thinking, well, Michael, that's probably going to be too expensive. Okay, I get that, but you're also looking at hiring AEs, right? So that's the labor. And then also you have to come up with, and I saw someone else here that would appreciate this. Roger is here, and Roger will appreciate this. You need an ontology. If you're going to start tagging things, you need to have an ontology. We need to have the same phrase or word or concept that works pre-production to post-production to archive. So when someone says actor, we know what the actor field is and what that means throughout the entire post process and production and archive process. And if you're looking to bring AEs in and have them tag stuff, you have to build that ontology. You have to build that nomenclature and tagging system to use, and then use that inside an asset management system or some other system that will continue to use those tags or export them when you're no longer using that system, because invariably you will migrate. So I'm a fan of finding an asset management solution that can do this, and then finding AI or some form of AI to tie into that to offload some of that for things that maybe it can't locate. Like perhaps you shot content and it's been transcoded and it's in a warehouse. You don't know where that where it was shot, right? Whether that was shot here or in another country, location can be difficult. So um, uh, maximize both areas. Utilize what the AIs can determine, or excuse me, the AEs can determine, and what the AI can determine. So moving on, we have Roland. What's up, Roland? You want NLEs and creative apps to hook up to APIs of narrow AIs. This is what's going to happen the next stage of creative AI. At least I'm hoping this will happen. You are completely right. We've gotten accustomed over the past 6 months, year, to use ChatGPT because it is a catch-all. Not just a term, but it's trained on a wide data set where you can type in your language and get a text response, right? What we found is that running those models locally is prohibitively expensive. You would need not an A100. I think an A100, I think, is what ChatGPT is using. But you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on graphics cards. That isn't going to happen for the consumer. But if you got purpose-built AIs, maybe this AI is built on, let's say, the Revolutionary War, and this AI was built on the Civil War, and this AI was built on the Vietnam War. Then you have an AI that understands what you're asking for and knows that, oh, you want information on the Revolutionary War? I'm going to activate the AI that is trained on the Revolutionary War. So you're getting smaller models, smaller data sets that are easier to run, and then kind of worker nodes, if I can use the CatDV reference there for some of my other nerds out there, that will then allow you to spawn AIs to accomplish these things. And there's already AI out there that does it. If you look at GPT Engineer, we look at godmode.ai, AGI, if I'm not mistaken. There's several out there that will spawn smaller purpose-built AI to accomplish certain tasks. Let's take a look at some more questions here. And again, feel free to add questions in chat, and we'll get to stories in a little bit. What happened at Bebop, and what is Shift Media? I don't know if I get this more from my family or I get this from more people in the industry. What happened at Bebop? Nothing. Bebop had a massive surge when the pandemic hit. As you can imagine, Bebop was editing in the cloud, utilizing multiple cloud providers, giving you live review and approve, playing out to a monitor. There was a relationship with LucidLink. It was a great product. The decision was made to kind of transition on how Bebop was being sold, and your buddy Michael wasn't part of that equation. Which is, in retrospect, okay. I really felt I did everything I could there, and it was time. So it actually worked out real well. I happened to be laid up on the couch with a bad back at the time. This was post NAB last year, but I wish him nothing but the best. And actually, I still send them leads whenever I come across someone who says, "I want to edit in the cloud, and all the solutions I found are too expensive." That includes you, Avid, edit on demand. And what is Shift Media? Okay, Shift Media. Shift Media is a parent company, Shift Holdings, that owns three products, and one is a Wire Drive. If you're in the advertising agency, it's an adjective. Wire Drive that to me. We also have Screeners.com, which is pre-release and a little bit of for your consideration content that is forensically and visually watermarked. It's meant for reviewers to view, and for advertisers, and it's bar none the highest security we've got, and a majority of our clients are studios, etc. And then the product that I'm focusing a lot on is Media Silo. Media Silo is light asset management. It's on-demand review and approve. It's also live review and approve with a third-party support, third-party plugin. We also have forensic watermarking, visual watermarking, versioning, tons of metadata control, mobile apps. It's just fantastic, and it scales linearly in terms of pricing, which is really unique. So let's go back to other questions. What software are you using to drive the session? The graphics integration is great. All right. Y'all going to laugh at me here. So I'm using Keynote. I have, I don't think I can show that to you. I have a Keynote presentation. Keynote presentation has a green screen on there. I then do a real-time key on that inside OBS. So that means the text you're seeing right now on screen that says news, Q&A, stories, free for all, that's just white text. on a and a black bar, obviously, on top of a green background. And then I have my loop deck down here that I can jump back to different slides. So each slide has different text on there. And then in OBS, I have different scenes, and those scenes have the layering. They have the lower thirds, the keynote, the input from the camera, the mic sweetener, just to give it a little bit more sexiness to it. And then I'm pumping everything to Restream, and we'll see how that goes. Let's take some other questions here. Let's try. We already did that one. Let's go to here. We have, is the truth about video editing software and Hollywood episodes still valid? That's a great question. In fact, if we go back to 5 things, and I'll share my screen again for those who didn't see this, this went a little bit, I guess, viral for our industry, right? Viral for our industry, means 100,000 or so hits. But if you go back to this video, there's over 100,000 views on YouTube, and it got played and it posted everywhere. And to be honest with you, I purposely titled it "The Truth About Video Editing" because I wanted to play with clickbait. I wanted to see if it actually worked, and it did. So the question is this still valid? Yes. You still have the stalwarts who are utilizing Avid Media Composer for feature film. If you look at the Academy Award winners every year, Avid puts out a list, and all, if not all, short of one, they're involved with those projects every year. The surprising omission was, or not the omission, but was when Parasite won a couple years ago. That was cut in Final Cut Classic, Final Cut 7, when the product had been dead for a decade. So that was kind of funny. Where Avid isn't, you find Adobe, and that's used for most anything that is going to broadcast, going to VOD for the most part. There are some theatrical things, obviously, that are done with Adobe. If we look at Sundance, right, a majority of things were cut with Adobe. But we're still seeing Adobe kind of picking up I don't say picking up the professional slack, but where Avid isn't professionally, Adobe is for editing. And then Adobe continues to go down market. And I know some people don't like that term, but hey, read the room. Resolve. Are people using Resolve more? Yes. It's free. The color work you can do in there is great. Editing is pretty buttery, although it's lacking a few of those features that really high-end professionals need. But I'm really not seeing much more adoption of it than before, again, in our industry, in our niche. You go outside our industry for social media and marketing and industries outside media and entertainment. Yes, it's making more traction because they don't need the horsepower that you're going to get from a tool like Media Composer. So I see Resolve picking up in a lot of other different verticals, also down market, but I don't see them making more of an editorial play inside film and television, etc. And then Final Cut 10, Final Cut Pro 10, Final Cut, depending on what name we're calling it now. And I know Alex is going to hate this. It's not even a discussion anymore. And it doesn't mean I dislike Final Cut 10. Excuse me, Final Cut 10, Final Cut Pro. Doesn't mean I dislike it. It just means that every discussion with a broadcaster, every discussion with a feature filmmaker, I can count on one hand how many times Final Cut 10 has even been brought up in the past 8 months. Again, not a knock on the tech. It's a fast and fluid editor. I've used it for things, not in a while. Unfortunately, it just didn't get the market share back that Final Cut 7 lost. And there's been a reluctance on the professional realm to invest in a software after what happened with Final Cut 7 overnight, annihilating a lot of how facilities worked. So again, no knock on 10. It's just not in the markets that I think a lot of people who are on this call are accustomed to seeing. So we'll scroll down and we'll see how many slings and arrows I'm getting right now. There's Daniel talking about gray meta. Yes, hit him up. We need industry standards for metadata ontology. Bill, that's genius. And you know what? There's people on this call that are working on that. Roger, are you still there? There's Roger. Who doesn't like a good ontology? Yes. Roger, I think, is probably working on something like this. A lot of folks are. I heavily recommend you looking into the Movie Labs 2030 Vision paper. It's 4 years old now, believe it or not. And one of their 10 principles of how filmmaking should happen at the studio level by 2030 is a common ontology, where we don't, right? Even from NLE to NLE, we have different terms, which is why now we have the Open Timeline Initiative, Open VFX Initiative, Open Review and Approve Initiative to kind of wrangle some of those things and get them kind of under control, because we don't have that. Oh, and as I scroll down, Roger even called out 2030. Okay. Here's a great question. In fact, this was something that was brought up at the Keycode Media and Alpha Dogs Editors Lounge a few months ago. You may remember Mark Gradanis asked a question: if someone wanted to get into filmmaking, should they take the history of filmmaking class, or should they be taking a programming class? It's valid. I think what we're going to see is the chasm right now between AI and the models and the data sets that make the models and how we interact with them. Right now, that bridge is through typing. Right. This is when you go into ChatGPT and type stuff in. And this is where you have the concept of prompt engineering, right? How can I present or ask the question in a way that's going to get AI to give me the answer I'm looking for, or a visual that I'm looking for? And right now it's kind of specialized, right? You have to learn what language cues to use. What we're going to start seeing is the ability for the prompt engineering to not be as big of a hurdle. And it will be easier to communicate and not have to be as exact. So, that being said, if you wanted to look for languages to learn and things to learn for programming and post, if you're looking for AI, you probably want to look into Python. A lot of interop with models that are running on GitHub or running in Docker, often are running downwind of something you can access with Python. You may also want to look into, especially if you're looking into getting into panel development for the different NLEs, JavaScript, right? That's a great way to get in for Adobe and several others. So that's something to look into as well. Diego, if you're looking to get into VFX, you may want to look into stuff Richard Sanchez has done, where he talks about code books and formulas to use for code books. I did an interview with him earlier this year through Shift Media. We have a great video on that. So I think looking into that would be good as well. Let's find some other questions. Well, let's get rid of that lower third and we'll try another one. Greg says, how's your back? It sucks. For those who don't know, I've had a bad back my entire life. And then before NAB, I had surgery 10 years or so ago. And then last year around NAB, played a doubleheader, played softball because I play like I'm 10 years old. And then we painted a room the next day, and I couldn't get out of bed the next day. And my back was just shot. So I have several bad discs. Epidurals aren't doing anything anymore. So at this point, it's stretching, pain management, painkillers. And after IBC this year, which someone asked if I'm going, yes, I am going to IBC. There may be surgery later on this year. I'm not looking forward to it. My first surgery, which was a microlumbar discectomy, if you want to look into that, was no picnic, and there were some complications. So I'm really not a fan of it, but I don't see what else could be done at this point. Oh, and I'm sorry, Diego, let me hide that. So let me scroll down and see what other questions we have. If you're not on Facebook, you should be tuning into the chat, because there's a ton of chat going on regarding a lot of the topics I'm talking about. What's another question? And then we'll get to a story, because I think I'm going to wrap up with, actually, you know what? I'm going to wrap up with a story. You know what? Before the story, because I have a great story for you, I'm going to answer one more pre-baked question, because I get this a lot. You post on our editors. What other subs do you use? I'm frequent on Reddit. not that part of Reddit. The professional side of Reddit, where we're talking about technology and editing and post production, etc. And Jeff Greenberg, master trainer extraordinaire, and moderator of several subs on Reddit. He moderates our editors, and so he and I we try to do a biweekly podcast, but sometimes it's tri-weekly. And there are a lot of subs I find have great information and have some good users. A lot of Reddit is a cesspool, not counting the last several months with what they did, which we don't need to get into. But there are a lot of subs that I think have good folks who contribute. So I'm going to share my screen once again, and I'll briefly go through those. So you'll notice that this looks like it's the year 2000. That's because I like using old Reddit. Old Reddit is easier for me to read. God, that sounds old, but yeah, I find it easier to read. But you can certainly just go to reddit.com and get the newer version. But we'll go back to old. So editors are where I spend most of my time. We also have video editing. If you want to look me up, I'm not someone that hides. So here is my name, AV Guru One. Yes, it's my license plate. Yes, you've seen me on the 405. Yes, I've had that since high school. So, so we have editors, video editing, video production, Premiere, Avid, which doesn't get much traffic, post-production, which doesn't get much traffic at all. We have video engineering, which is much more broadcast than anything else. We also have broadcast engineering, film ministry LA. I like seeing kind of newbies to the industry in here. Also, I have a camera system around the house from Reolink, so I've got Reolink. I've got some subs for AI. Uba Booga is a front end for AI models. Artificial is one of them. AI Block, the Code Product AI, Home Assistant, Hackintosh, and now we're just getting even further outside media and entertainment. But feel free to hit me up, and I'm happy to list all these out for you. Okay, so as we come to kind of the end, almost the end, I have a story I want to tell you. This story I need to preface by saying that, I'll save this question for next time. That was a big question. We'll save that for next time. Story. This story is about Avid. And I tell you because Avid was our main news at the front of this, right? This story was told to me by multiple people at Avid. Multiple people at Avid have confirmed the story, but it's not written anywhere. You're not going to find it online. Well, you might after this video. And so I hope that via the telephone game, I'm not losing any saucy details or making it fluffier than it is. But with those badly worded caveats, here's a story. So you're probably aware that Avid's had storage for a long time now, right? And they're now in the Nexus portion. Prior to Nexus, they had the ISIS, right? The ISIS, the 5000, infinitely scalable intelligent storage. I think what is that? Not a portmanteau where they come up with the name after the acronym. Anyway, so this was called the Avid ISIS storage. It was on their website. It was on their price books. And when they shipped it, it says ISIS on there, right? Let's make that bigger so you can see. It's an ISIS. So Avid sells to everyone, right? Not just folks in Hollywood or New York or to commercial agencies. They also sell to government agencies, right? Like the government, like the military. And as lore goes, Avid had this installed as a kind of proof of concept or a POC, as we call it, at a military outlet. I don't know which branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, I don't know. But they had an ISIS in there and it worked great, which it does. I mean, Avid's shared storage has always been kind of bulletproof. But they said, look, we can't submit a purchase request for something called ISIS. I'm sure you can understand why, right? There could be some confusion. There's no way we're going to get a green light to buy something called ISIS, especially in the quantity we need. So someone at Avid had the great idea of getting nameplates made up that got stuck to the chassis that said freedom. So somewhere, if it's still running, there's Avid storage out there called Avid Freedom Storage, and that's how our country's being protected, with Avid Freedom Storage. I'm going to scroll down and see if any Avid people have said yes, that did happen, or maybe they won't. I don't. Oh, thanks for trying to call me, Bill. Appreciate it. So that was the story. So as we move on, this is free for all. I've done the news. I've taken Q&A. I've told my story, and this is where I would love to hear what you think this should morph into. Is this something I should monologue on? Is this something that I should bring a co-host on? Is this just, hey, do this on occasion, Michael? So I'd love to hear your input. While I'm waiting for people to put stuff in, chat, we'll see. Okay, Alex. And I didn't mean that to be dismissive. I was just reading what you said. Look into STEM therapy for your back. I wish. Unfortunately, uh, if that even is a thing, you can't regrow the discs. You'd have to do a disc replacement, and a disc replacement, whether it's real or natural, is fraught with other errors anyway. I think I'm slated for a double fusion, L3, L4, L3, L4, L4S5, or maybe L5S1. They're all messed up. ISIS was a backronym. Yeah, that's okay. I could be overthinking that completely. Deb, you like this? You like this format? Keep going and call it a happy hour. You know what? If I wasn't going to see someone on the other side of the hill after this, I might be doing a happy hour. I just got some Angels Envy, and I'm a big fan of Angels Envy. I may be pouring myself a dram or six. Let's see. Well, let's turn off that again. Sorry about that. I think that's it. I think I've taken up 52 minutes of your hard-earned time. I see that we still have a couple dozen of you still on the line. I want to say thank you. I've missed you all. I don't get to talk to you nearly as much. I don't get to go to as many shows because we don't have as many shows. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person. And I love breaking tech bread with you. So again, as I say in 5 things, learn more, do more. Check out the 5 Things series and share it with the rest of your techie friends. And I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, everyone.